The VCT Kickoff events have completed in all regions, with all 8 teams being locked in for Masters Madrid. And the question of if every qualified team is actually the top 2 of their region has been brought up, so let's talk about it.
Coming up from Gen G is just keeping them tied up even further as they just waltz through the touch the screen on for the ace for Munchkin, the IGL, and
out next year, it's tucked away, back Jet, it's a fall upon their houses.
Oh, come on.
He might just find it. He will!
Quick little chase here from T1.
Oh, interesting.
Has us in a really bad spot here. And
Firstly, with the region that I personally think is sending their clear 2 best teams to Madrid, VCT Pacifc. Their kickoff started with quite the shock, with highly anticipated teams like Bleed and RRQ going out early. And although some teams that were expected to perform didn't quite meet expectations, we had some teams stepping up big time like Gen G. Gen G's last season didn't go too well, starting hot and falling off majorly after only 4 games, but this season they've started hot, and it doesn't look like they're going to be falling off anytime soon. The roster is entirely new from last year, all the way down to the coaching staff. The only player left is Meteor, who is role swapped from Duelist to Sentinel for this roster. The rest of the team is mostly built from well-established Korean veterans, with Munchkin, Lakia, and Texture. There is one anomaly though, as Gen G has picked up a completely unknown player who goes by the name of Karan, with a whole team describing him as a raw aimer. This team was an unknown force, and they were generally expected to be in the lower tier of Pacific teams. They defied expectations though, taking down RRQ in the first round and playing a close game against Paper X, which they eventually lost. This loss sent Gen G into the lower bracket where they would have a rematch against RRQ to get into the play-in, which Gen G did win. In the other groups, the results were much more expected, with Gen G and T1 qualifying out of the top of their group without much difficulty. In the play-in, Gen G took down Team Secret and Zeta Division to make their way into the playoffs, where they would be met by their Korean counterpart, DRX. DRX is a team that was quite controversial during the offseason, moving their roster around in multiple events before eventually deciding to let go of 2 of their most beloved players, RB and Zest. And coming in to replace them we have young rookies, Foxy9 and Flashback. Foxy9 came in to play for the main DRX roster a few times in 2023, but was always taken out when it came to more important matches. And now he's on a completely different role, where he was originally a main duelist player and is now playing Flex with a lean towards Viper. Even with the changes, DRX had a much more straightforward road to playoffs, taking down Detonation Focus Me and Talon Esports, both being 2-0 wins. They faced off against Gen G in the first round of playoffs, and with the playoffs being single elimination, only one of them would be able to make it to Madrid. The series was close, but in the end went to Gen G, resulting in DRX missing their first international event since the very first LAN, Masters Reykjavik 2021. And on the other side of the bracket, we have Paper X and T1. Paper X were coming off an insane year, getting top 3 at Masters Tokyo and 2nd place at Champions. Unfortunately, they were unable to keep their full roster, losing Jing as he is mandatory military service this year. His replacement was someone that was unexpected, as Pure X brought in Munyet from Global Esports. People didn't know how well Munyet would stack up compared to Jing, considering that Jing was the best race player in the world last year, but still knew that Pure X would be a top team. And in the kickoff, Pure X showed that they were still a top team, taking down Gen G to get into the playoffs and beating T1 to guarantee Madrid. But when it came to the grand finals, there was an interesting result, with Gen G winning the best of 5 and qualifying to Madrid as the number 1 seed from VCT Pacific, while Paper X will be going in as the 2nd seed. Now if you thought VCT Pacific was crazy, EMEA will put you in a coma.
Martin's can see it all. Does he commit? It looks like he does! Oh my god! Working this as far as they can. Cloud with it all to prove, it all to do, and all of the shots going his way!
Situation on Common Core, not that comfortable yet.
Such a good paranoia. And it's just going to stop them all in their tracks. They might be moving in one by one.
Oh, it's good! Chronicle, this has to be everything! What a bailout! He needs another! Oh, he's gonna get it!
In 2023, VCT EMEA was kind of clowned on in the Valor community, being dubbed the one-team region. And if we're being real, that's not too far off of the truth. Fnatic were undeniably the best team in the world last year, even while having a lackluster performance at Champs. Meanwhile, their fellow EMEA teams did not reach the same heights. Even though Team Liquid were able to take down Fnatic in the VCT EMEA finals, they couldn't get past top 6 at Masters Tokyo, while Fnatic won the event. And at Champions, 3 EMEA teams failed to even get past the group stage, while Foot went down in the playoffs at 8th place, while Fnatic went on to get top 4. In 2024 though, it was all set to change, with rosters like Foot, Vitality, and Na'Vi coming together, the average level of EMEA teams was expected to rise exponentially. But what happened in the kickoff event was anything other than expected. Teams like Foot and Liquid that were expected to be pretty good in this event failed to even qualify out of their groups. Meanwhile, Team Heretics and Carmine Corp were both qualifying out of their group, with Heretics making their way straight into the playoffs, while Carmine Corp had to play through the play-in. And with Team Vitality in the play-in alongside them, surely Carmine Corp wouldn't be able to make the playoffs.
the back of on this moment and with a
They made the playoffs. And if you thought the crazy stops there, oh boy, strap in. The first playoff match between Heretics and Na'Vi started close, with Heretics taking the first map in overtime. And going into the second map, which was Na'Vi's pick, it was expected to continue just as close. That's not what happened though, as Heretics would go on to dominate Breeze to qualify for Madrid and deny the Masters Copenhagen winning roster a spot at Masters Madrid. The second qualifying series was even more insane though, between Carmine Corp and Fnatic. As I mentioned before, Fnatic were the titans of the world in 2023, taking 2 out of 3 major lands and placing top 4 at Champions. And going into 2024, the conversations weren't about if they could keep their form or if they would qualify, but if they could win all 3 lands this year. So going into this qualifying match, no matter how much better Carmine Corp looked compared to last year, there was absolutely no doubt in anyone's mind that Fnatic would win this series. Carmine Corp went on to shock the world though, taking down Fnatic 2-0, meaning that Fnatic would be missing their first land since Masters Berlin in 2021.
Oh, he's got a second! It's all on Leo! Oh, he cannot do enough!
With these series results, the EMEA Kickoff Grand Finals will be between Carmine Corp and Team Heretics. And now would be a good time to look at exactly who is on these teams, starting with Team Heretics. Team Heretics had a rough season last year, only winning 2 out of their 11 games in 2023, which meant that they had to take a different approach when building this roster. And they did a full 180, going from a roster of established players and veterans to a young roster with very little experience. They kept the coaching staff from last year with Neil Zinho and Weber, as well as Smokes player Boo, turning him into an IGL to lead the young players. And the young players they brought in had lots of promise, bringing in Benji Fishy, Miniboo, Rians, and Woots, all from Challengers teams. Their most well-known new player is most definitely Benji Fishy, who was a prominent name in Fortnite all the way up until June 2022, where he quit competing to pursue a pro Valorant career. And after only 1 year of playing Challengers, he found himself on a partners team, and has made his way into a Masters event as well as a regional grand final. The other players on the team are also really important to talk about though, as everyone on the team were very promising young talents in their respective Challengers League, some too young, like Woots. Woots came out of the Turkish leagues, and was known for being a young player with strong mechanics and an even stronger agent pool. And coming into this team, some people that noticed him during his time in Challengers were excited to see him play in the kickoff. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be the case, as he was too young to actually compete in the league, with him being 17 years old and his birthday being in mid-March. Even with his birthday being right after the start of Madrid, he will not be participating. So with Heretics missing an integral part of their roster for this event, they needed a stand-in, and ended up playing with Pacifc, who played in the East Surge Challengers League last year. He's a bit of an older player compared to the rest of the team, at 24 years old, but he filled his role extremely well in this event. This is a roster that had a lot of promise, but I don't think anyone expected them to be this good this early on in the season, especially with one of their main roster players not being eligible to play, and one of them not being able to even enter Germany where the league is held. And on the other side of the Grand Finals, we have Carmine Corp, another team that completely blew up their 2023 roster. In 2023, Carmine Corp was one of the most talked about teams for all the wrong reasons. Something about melons?
You fucking
After that abysmal year, there was absolutely no way they would keep the same team, and they let go of almost the entire team, including coaching staff, only leaving assistant coach Zeiss and initiator player Shin, who swapped roles to controller for this year. They started by bringing in legendary head coach Eng, who is most well known for leading Gambit and M3C during 2021 and 2022. And the rest of the team has yet again come from various Challengers leagues, bringing in Magnum, Tomasi, Narrate, and Martin. Magnum is most definitely the most well-known player from this new roster, spending a good chunk of his Valorant career on Fnatic. And most recently, he played for the dominant EMEA Challengers team Apex, who barely fell short of winning Ascension. Everyone else came from various Challengers leagues, with Martin coming from Italian Challengers team GMT, Tomasi coming from Portuguese team SAW, and Narrate coming from NA Challengers team Mad Lions. Narrate specifically is an interesting name on this team, as he was most well known for being a top ranked player not too long ago, and decided to make the transition into pro play only a year ago. And although he played pretty well for his first team Mad Lions, his team did so poorly that they got relegated from the league. Eng brought Narrate over from NA to EMEA, and has turned the once ranked grinding duelist player into a top EMEA flex player. And now, all these players have made their way into a grand final, with 8 out of 10 players in the grand finals coming out of 2023 Challengers. This grand final was highly anticipated, and was honestly the start of a new Valorant era, with so many young players on the server. Heretics took the first map in this best of 5, but Carmine Corp dominated the next 3 maps, taking the series 3-1, and are now going into Madrid as the #1 seed from EMEA. A complete 180 for the org from last year.
这个位置已经被发现，但是打这个所有的有
人。那最终话 low cam 的一波一打，燃烧榴弹没有出手，再架再打，
没有漏啊。
哇！
VCT China is the new kid on the block this year, with lots of new teams and new players being brought into the spotlight. Even with an entirely new league, there were still quite a few teams that had high expectations going into the year, such as JDG, EDG, FPX, Titan Esports Club, and Trace Esports. More specifically, JDG had extremely high expectations going into this year, after their impressive performances during the China Evolution Series at the end of 2023. There were some questions after they lost their IGL due to import rules, but generally they were still believed to be a top team. That didn't exactly pan out though, as the team failed to even qualify out of the group stage. The other teams mentioned had pretty decent results though, with Titan Esports Club making it into the play-in, while Trace Esports qualified out of the play-in and made their way into the playoffs. The three teams that met them in the playoffs though were absolutely no joke, with Dragon Ranger Gaming, FPX, and Edward Gaming. The first series in the playoffs was between FPX and DRG, which FPX took pretty convincingly at 2-0, locking in their spot at Madrid. And the second series was another that was highly anticipated, between Edward Gaming and Trace Esports. Trace is a team that has challenged EDG in the past, even taking a series from them at the end of last year, and they seem to have continued to level up since then, taking down almost every team in their path during this event. Not only that, but EDG had a few close calls during their group stage match against Wolves, having to come back on the last map to earn their playoff spot, so everyone was wondering if Trace could take down the Kings of China. They fought hard on their pick of Sunset, keeping it competitive and taking it to overtime where EDG won 14-12. The second map though was not nearly as competitive, as EDG took the map 13-6, earning their spot at Masters Madrid. So now the grand finals will be between EDG and FPX, and the series was actually quite good. EDG took the first two maps at 14-12 and 13-6, but FPX took the third map at 13-8, giving us a proper series. The fourth map was an absolute banger, going to overtime where EDG eventually won 16-14, taking the grand final and the first seed from Masters Madrid, while FPX will be going in as the second seed from China.
He's good for those four. Paranoia to come across, plants still an assist from the wingman to get the clap onto RGL, allowing Oxy!
Off on all cylinders.
What? Oh my God!
But Marv has something out there to say.
We're just playing a mini game right now.
And last but most definitely not least, we have VCT Americas, who possibly had the most stacked kickoff tournament. Going into this event, there were quite a few teams that people had on their radar, like Loud, Leviathan, NRG, and Sentinels. And with other teams making big changes like 100 Thieves, Cloud9, and G2, this was expected to be the most stacked and competitive kickoff out of all the regions. The focal point of the group stage was the entirety of Group B, which had 3 out of the 4 teams that were expected to be top 4 in the region: Leviathan, Loud, Sentinels, and 100 Thieves. The odd one out in this group was clearly 100 Thieves, but they didn't even put up that poor of a performance. Unfortunately for them though, they couldn't put up a series win, and went out in the group stage alongside Leviathan. The other groups went about as expected, with NRG, G2, EG, and MIBR qualifying. The plan featured G2, MIBR, and Sentinels, with the team making it out being Sentinels, meaning that the playoffs would be Sentinels, Loud, NRG, and Evil Geniuses. All of these teams went through major roster changes this year, and none of them were the same from the previous. Sentinels benched their world champion Smokes player Pencata to bring in Zelsis, while putting Tens, the most famous duelist player of all time, on full-time Smokes. They also took a page out of EMEA's book and brought in T2 talent, with IGL John QT. John QT was a part of the dominant NA Challengers team M80 in 2023, winning the mid-season face-off in the VCL playoffs with the team. And although they were dominant the entire year, they fell short when it mattered, losing in the Ascension Grand Finals to the Guard, who were now G2. Evil Geniuses also picked up some Challengers talent during the offseason, but it was not the players that some people expected. After winning Champions, EG lost almost their entire roster besides 2 pieces, head coach Potter and player Jogamo. The rest of the team came from either Tier 2 or failed franchise teams, with Derek, Superman, Apoth, and Nature. Derek specifically is an interesting name to look at on this team. After joining 100 Thieves in 2022 and having an insane second half of the year, and then going into 2023 where the team looked lost the whole season, and Derek individually was not playing anywhere near as good as he did in 2022, I don't think anyone expected him to be on a partnered team this year. He made it through though, and he's looking back in form and extremely comfortable on this team.
And Derek, the Vietnamese duo, with Derek with the first kill onto Les. Nightfall then coming out for some information, doubling up the fight back towards the A site. The lineup on 2, it's a 1v1. Him and QCK, 8 bullets left. The spray comes across. Derek comes in for the floor K in the round.
Other players on the team have also played quite well, like Superman, who is known for being cold in the clutch moments, and he is living up to that name in the big leagues.
Stinger, is that going to be enough? They know where Ned is. He's dropped him. Another clutch moment from Superman. He does it again.
Loud lost their star player Aspas to Leviathan in the offseason and had to make changes to not only their roster, but the way that they approach the game. Aspas isn't really the type of player that you can just replace, as he was simply way too good. So instead of trying to find a high-profile duelist player, Loud picked up QCK from Furia to fill the duelist role. QCK wasn't even on Duelist in 2023, so it seemed like an interesting move, but what he brought to the team was the ability to play any agent that Sadak wanted. During the group stage, Loud showed that they were really leaning into playing a lot of Phoenix, having QCK playing him on 4 out of the 6 maps they played in this tournament. And finally, NRG did their own thing and built the most stacked roster they possibly could, bringing in Ethan and Demon 1 who were fresh off of a championship, as well as Marv to accompany his old teammates from Optic, Crashies, and Victor. These teams are all extremely good, and no matter what, there was going to be at least one upset in this playoff bracket. The first series for Madrid qualification was between Evil Geniuses and Loud, which started quite interestingly. EG challenged Loud on the first map, taking it at 13-7, but failed to keep up in the next 2, giving Loud the series 2-1 and locking in the Brazilian spot for Madrid. And on the other side of the bracket, a much more exciting series, Sentinels vs NRG. Both of these teams features players that have won big events, but only one could make Madrid. The first map was extremely close, going to overtime which ended in Sentinels' favor. NRG took control back in the second map, pushing the series to the final map Split. And with a series that was this close the whole way through, it's only right that it not only go 3 maps, but that the third map be a banger. It was not a banger. Sentinels dominated this map with an 11-1 defensive half, and closing the map at 13-3, securing their spot at Masters Madrid, the first Masters event for the organization in almost 3 years. And with the grand final now being locked in, we were set up to see a true banger of a series. Could Loud yet again establish themselves as the best team in the Americas League despite roster changes? Could Sentinels finally win another regional final with their last grand final being in May 2021? Could TenZ establish himself as one of the best players in the world yet again, this time on a completely different role? This best of 5 grand final would prove to be one for the ages. Sentinels would take the first 2 maps at 13-9 and 13-3, looking like they had complete control. But these were the maps they had shown as their 2 clearly best maps, Sunset and Split. The true test would come on the third map, Icebox, which is one that has been historically good for Loud. This map was consistently pulled back and forth between the teams, with one pulling ahead and the other clawing their way back into the game. In the end, Loud took it at 13-11, giving us the proper series we were all waiting for. The fourth map was Bind, another map that Sentinels was quite good on in this event, but Loud dominated them in the majority of this map, taking a 9-3 lead and closing the map at 13-8. This win sent us to the final map of Lotus, a map that we hadn't seen from Loud yet in this tournament. Could Loud finally finish off a reverse sweep, or will this best of 5 end the same way it did against Fnatic and Evil Geniuses? Sentinels opened the map strong, taking round after round after round, ending their attacking half at 10-2. If Loud wanted this series, they would have to do what was done to them only a year ago, pulling the most impossible comeback imaginable. Unfortunately, the map was too far gone, and Sentinels became the VCT Americas Kickoff champions, and are now going into their first Masters event in 3 years as the top seeded team from their region.
Like 2E's dropping one, it's a 2 versus 2. Right inside, trying to stick it, another one to fall. It's all up to Zek, who does get the kill. Trying to stick the spike. He gets to the fuse with the Red Bull clutch. And Sentinels are going to be America's kickoff champions.
And if you were wondering if TenZ still had it in him, of course he does. It's TenZ.
First trip cleared, the dog went all the way around the pillar. TenZ does it again.
Back on the outside by middle and B main. There's that fight, the cutter. Oh my god! It's but these smokes. TenZ is already pushing towards that spike. A beautiful Dizzy allowing TenZ to get that pick. Up to Sadak alone. A nice shot there from TenZ once again.
These 4 tournaments over the past few weeks were absolute bangers, with this event not only being the coronation of so many new players and teams, but the homecoming party for so many players who fell out of the top of the scene years ago. Of course, with Masters Madrid being so limited, we're missing out on so many top teams and players. Hopefully when Shanghai comes around, we can see the combining of these teams and truly see some amazing Valorant. What were your guys' thoughts on this event? Be sure to let me know in the comments below, as well as any criticisms for this video. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe, as it would help me out immensely. Anyways, that's it from me.